93 WIBC.
Hey, welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on 93 WIBC, live from the worst place on earth. That would be Washington, D.C. That's why I'm up against a gray wall like I'm doing a mug shot. And joining me from a much nicer background is Nicole Neily, the president of Parents Defending Education, who gives us a constant stream of what I've argued is the most important thing, a database of the junk that has happened. So when they tell you, oh, this never happened at all, and they try to memory hole this garbage, you can point to a site that has a detailed list of all of the things that have been going on, a map to quantify it. That's over at defendinged.org. Nicole, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So the latest bit of nonsense that one of your team sent me that I couldn't resist bringing you on to talk about is a situation from Watertown, Massachusetts, in which there is a transgender student who supposedly had some kind of hit list to go after people. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes. So this student created a hit list that was reported by local media. And what was curious is that the student's gender identity was not mentioned and really seems to have been swept under the rug, both by the district as well as obviously local media. But it's the district's response to this whole situation that is really, jaw dropping, because you think like, that's no joking matter, right? In an era of school shootings, right? If your child is in danger, if there is a child who is making, real threats at school, that's something that we as a community, we as a country should take seriously. But instead, Watertown's reaction was not what you would expect. It was not taking it seriously. It was, I think it falls under the rubric of what you and I know as restorative justice, where it's like, let's sing Kumbaya and let's hope and pray that this goes away, which is not, frankly, how we should deal with real threats like this.
And obviously, it's not how we should deal with threats like this. Teachers know this better than anyone. And that leads us to this situation out of Pennsylvania, in which just a couple of days ago, there was a student who went to a school board meeting by herself and started lecturing the school board because she said, look, this transgender student who attacked another person in our school, who beat them half to death with a Stanley Cup, I warned you guys that this was coming like 5 hours before the attack happened. And the school did nothing. She went to the counselor. She went to them and said, hey, look, there's a threat right here. This transgender student is threatening violence. They have a hit list. Nothing was done. How many times is this going to have to happen before we actually start taking these kind of threats seriously?
No, and it's, at the end of the day, equal justice before the law is for everyone. It doesn't mean that some people have special carve-outs and they get special privileges and we give them extra chances. What we saw in Watertown actually is that the district wanted to create an affinity group to help to, the quote is like appalling. It's, we want to show empathy for the creator, right? Like what is like, let's get to this person's real motivation for creating this hit list. Wait a minute.
Empathy for the creator of the hit list?
Correct. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's really like, what about the people who, like the students who found their name on the list and thought, wow, like this kid could come to school and kill me. It defies belief that this is what a taxpayer funded public school, their response, a group of adults sitting around saying, yeah, that seems like the right cause. Like that seems like the right solution to me. Not one person said, guys, I don't know if that's the right path forward at this moment in time.
So it reminds me of what the president of Columbia University today said back in 2001, 2 weeks after the 9/11 terror attacks, in which she was up in front of some kind of community panel saying that, like, well, before, you start saying just terrorism is bad, we really want to take a look at the motives, what actually caused people to do these kind of actions. And it calls back to Obama's Syrian 2011 comments in which he said, well, the reason that there's violence in the Middle East is because they don't have jobs. And if they had the infrastructure, they would be fine. It's like people will do anything but require individual accountability unless it's politically expedient to start suggesting that, well, obviously this person committed this kind of violence because they're on the far right, instead of just saying, you know what, maybe don't commit horrific acts of violence. There's a concept.
Right. And you and I over the past several years have had a front row seat into the loss of trust, right? The just total erosion of the relationship between parents and school districts, right? And I think, you and I are not the people who want to burn the whole system down. No. I do want, there are families that will always be in the public school system, and they should be able to trust that their institutions, their teachers, their administrators have their children's best interests at heart. Right. That really took a hit, obviously, during COVID when we saw unions, administrators try to keep schools closed for longer than they needed to be. But that trust has to be restored. And when we see things like this happen in Watertown, in Pennsylvania, where administrators are not taking real threats seriously, or they're unequally enforcing justice, right? Where some kids get special carve-outs. That's not how we bring families back to the table, right? That's how you have families leave if they have other options. You have, simmering discontent, and rightly so, because if you don't care about my child's safety, and you don't care that my child is not learning anything, right? We've seen the NAEP scores like drop off a cliff. My kids are not learning and they're not safe. Why on earth should you have any more of my tax dollars? And so it's really concerning that this is something, again, that administrators are moving forward, eyes wide open, saying, yeah, you know what? Sorry, let's create a healing circle, not let's suspend the student that wanted to kill their peers.
Right. We're on with Nicole Neily from Parents Defending Education, talking about this absurd trend. It's not a new trend. It's been going on for several years now. And as you pointed out, it's driving the parents away, and it's the administrators driving the parents away. And that's the key. It's not the majority of teachers. I did a survey of 615 Midwestern teachers a couple of years ago, and I asked them, why are you leaving the classroom? And it was a very difficult survey to put together. We had to confirm that they were leaving the classroom that year. They weren't just switching districts. They weren't just taking a break, like they were leaving the classroom. And we found that the overwhelming majority of teachers who were leaving because administrators had either included these policies that would put them at risk, like this far leftist nonsense, or they had policies in place that put their safety and student safety at risk with this behavior. And I remember you and I talked about this directly. We told everyone the behavior crisis is driving away the best teachers and parents from these districts. And I feel like we're here a couple of years later, and although you and I aren't the people who like to do this, it's really an I told you so situation. It's heartbreaking.
No, I still quote your survey. I mean, you were Cassandra, right? You were warning. The warning signals were there. Daniel Buck has done incredible work on this. But it's really interesting because this whole rubric of restorative justice is done under the premise of breaking the school to prison pipeline, which A, is false, and it is a misnomer, and lots of people have done research on that. But also, as you said, it's a reason that teachers are leaving the classroom. I mean, as many videos as we see of students having the crap beat out of them, we also are seeing horrific videos of teachers, right, that are being attacked by students, administrators that are sitting there, sitting on their hands, not doing anything, right? If a student knows they can get away with murder or, close to murder, right? That student who was shot, the teacher who was shot in Virginia Beach, and there will be no consequences. Weirdly, that behavior doesn't stop, right? It turns out that sending a child to the principal's office and singing Kumbaya is not the best way to break a cycle of behavior.
And we point all of these instances out with the trans hit lists in Pennsylvania and Massachusetts. We point the situations out regarding the behavior crisis that are plaguing a lot of suburban and inner city schools. And you say, well, what's the common denominator? What's the thread linking all of them? And it's that school to prison pipeline myth that you were talking about. This idea that if you have a large number of suspensions at your school, and this is what we were told at IPS, that you at your specific school building, you need to keep your number of suspensions and expulsions below this quota. And that's that restorative justice idea. So instead of actually bringing in a student who just beat the living crap out of another child, you bring them in, and instead of saying, you know what, you have put the safety of these kids at risk, you're suspended, you bring them in, and again, like you said, it's kumbaya, and all in the favor of, oh, well, we can't suspend him. That would take away from our rating of being more equitable by having fewer detentions and suspensions. And it's not even missing the forest for the trees at this point. It's missing the forest by sticking your head in the dirt and pretending that there's nothing at all.
Right. And this, unfortunately, has been a priority for the Department of Education. I mean, going back to the Obama years, this is a policy that Catherine Lehman, then and now head of OCR, really pushed under the guise of what's called disparate impact analysis, where it says if statistics show that you're disciplining students of different races at different rates above, beyond whatever the student population is, that's proof that you are racist. And so districts, fearful of the Department of Education calling them racist, opening a Title VI investigation, districts choose, I think, logically so, to not, right, to stay within those parameters by not disciplining certain kids or perhaps over disciplining other children to try and bring their numbers in line. Max Eden at the American Enterprise Institute has written a book about this. He said, this is how we got Parkland. This is how we got Marjorie Stone and Douglas. Nicholas Cruz had been identified as a problematic student, but nothing was done because of his race. We know the Obama or the Biden people last May sent out guidance documents on this, again, calling it, funny enough, the non-discrimination in student discipline. But that's exactly what they're encouraging districts to do, is to discriminate, to treat students differently in the discipline pipeline. on the basis of race. That takes the decision out of the hands of local administrators, and it results in situations like we're seeing now on the gender front, where districts are not disciplining those students out of fear of reprisal of investigation. That's so inappropriate.
Right. And I think that's the best way to boil this all down to a single point. As long as school districts continue to handcuff the blindness of justice, as long as they continue to hamper the treating everyone the same based on behavior, and instead treating students different based on equity intersectional charts of, well, your gender is this and your color is this, so if we throw this into the formula, you should get this punishment. As long as we create these hamstringed approaches and ignore warning signs like these, again, these hit lists from these disgruntled, mentally unhealthy students who should be receiving extreme amounts of medical care and genuine love instead of, faux affirmation, we're going to still have these events that are just going to get worse and worse, I think. Is that kind of an accurate trend up the line in a way?
Yeah, and it's really interesting that these kinds of things are happening during an election year, because you look at polling about this, right? And I mean, still majorities of the population, spanning racial lines, spanning political lines, believe in colorblind justice. We believe in equality before the law. And to watch that undermined by, this White House before our very eyes is something that is really jaw-dropping.
I think so. Nicole Neily, Parents Defending Education, thanks for hopping on. I hate that we have to bring you on because these events keep happening, but we're really glad that you're keeping track of it and quantifying it for us.
Thank you so much.